Welcome everyone to the Man in Search of Gold podcast. I'm your host, Eric Mangold, and I'm the founder of Argosy Wealth Management. This is the show where we share ideas, strategies, and history to help you improve your life one financial move at a time. Let's get started. Okay, and we're back. Hey everybody, Man in Search of Gold podcast. Today we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Dominic Gaziano. And Dr. Gaziano, Dr. G, as we're going to be able to say today,
Yep, sure.
is a practicing general internal medicine physician in Chicago. And he's the director of Body and Mind Medical Center. He's made numerous television appearances as a medical expert on health, fitness, and nutrition. He was appointed to the Chicago Fitness Council, which is Mayor Daley's Health and Fitness Task Force. He served as medical director of the Advocate Illinois Masonic Integrative Medicine Department for 3 years, and now lectures regularly on integrative approaches to anxiety and depression to doctors and other healthcare providers. He's also a regular wellness and stress management lecturer to the community. He started a lecture series, and also he completed his medical research fellowship at Northwestern University in Chicago. But he has a lot of other passions, including owning a restaurant, writing and producing television shows. He actually created a 34 episode syndicated health called Lifestyles Weekly, which was a half-hour television magazine show that gives tips for healthy living. He's published 4 books, including Well Now, which is available on Amazon. And if you look at Amazon, you can see all of the reviews are 5 stars. And he's recently done lectures and programs on work stress and developed programs that are now available to help executives tackle corporate work stress. And he believes that understanding the stresses that affect you directly can help you become healthy and happy. So, Dr. G, thank you for being here. I always like to start off with how did your path to medicine start from when you grew up? Where did it begin? Was it when you were playing with Legos? Did you have the doctor set, or was it something? How did it evolve?
So my father's a doctor, and I went through a phase when I dressed up Halloween. I was a doctor, and I want to be a doctor.
Every Halloween, you were a doctor?
No, not every. No, just a couple actually, but a few. Actually, I rebelled because if you one of the doctors on the show, The Doctors, he on his intro on the website, he goes, his father and mother would come to him and he says, "Hey, we want you to be whatever kind of doctor you want to be." So it was like a choice of, are you want to be a doctor or something, So there was a little pressure maybe to, and I had 3 older brothers that, actually 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother that all went into medicine. So we had a lot kind of heavy, my father, but so there's that influence there. But I liked international relations. I rebelled in college. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to do what my parents want. I'm going to try something else." So I was in college and I said, I took international relations and chemistry. I hedged my bet. I went chemistry, took all the prerequisites for med school. Like halfway through college and to the end of my sophomore year, I said, "Okay, it might be okay to be a doctor because it's more of a social science." And I learned a lot about international relations then, and I don't know if I want to be a diplomat or a teacher, at that level. I'd rather, and I decided to go into medicine because I learned it's more of a social science, and I love interacting with a diverse group of people. So that's kind of pulled me a little bit more and toward medicine.
So then in college, when you undergrad, did you then say, "Okay, I got to start going and focusing on my pre-med courses"? Was that like sophomore year, junior year?
Oh yeah. So no, I started, with all my science courses initially, and arts and science, but I was chemistry and so. But anyway, fast forward in my practice, I have international relations and I have United Nations in my practice. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, in that. And just kind of, you mentioned some things in the introduction about I'm kind of passionate about stress, and we're going to talk about stress today. So I wondered why I was passionate. So it was in my book, Well Now, I talk a lot about stress, and 3 times in my life I went down. In medical school, I got stressed out. And then when I moved to Chicago and I thought, oh, I'm ready for the big city. I always want to move here from a smaller suburban city. And I went down, and then I opened up a restaurant and I went down. So all 3 times, what was the pattern of the stress? And it's because I isolated myself, because I'm an Italian, gregarious, like I said, I like people. And I isolated myself. You really learn. And writing that book was cathartic that I really, oh, wow, that's why I like teaching stress so much. I went through things and I noticed the same pattern in some people like, okay, you're isolating yourself, you know, and we're doing this a lot with, of course, we're all on our screens all the time, phones,
Yeah.
and we're isolating ourselves a lot more post pandemic. And that's part of the, way we can get out of this in your head. People walk into my office and I've had thousands of patients encounters, right? I've done pattern things of looking at their stress, thousands over a couple decades of, and then so I want to leverage that experience and wisdom to something bigger, that I'm putting together, for for the public called Rapid Mind Resets, and some educational resources I'm putting together for that. And there's some programs for corporate, for that. And we could explore some of that today. And work stress is the number one stress in America. And we have relationship stress, we have environmental stress, we have financial stress. And I go through and I take what are those 15 lists of top stresses, and it changes every year to geopolitical stress. Certain
Mm.
times, we're going through some changes right now. So, but work stress is something that I've kind of focused on a lot of my younger patients in 20s, 30s. They're starting work, and I'm saying, they don't have the coping skills. And I say, bad news, stress is hard to get used to. Good news, the stats are later in your life, in your work life, as you reach 50 or so, or 45, 50 in the work environment, stress gets less because subconsciously, consciously, you develop coping skills, coping
Mm.
skills to deal with it. And I kind of help patients over the weeks, months, years develop those coping skills when they come see me, and they're not taking their diabetic medicines and the sugars are sky high.
Mm.
"Oh, I'm stressed out. I stopped, I didn't fill my prescription." Oh, it's stress. Get to the root of that, and it's causing a physical problem now. It's going to cause, to have an early heart attack because that's a major risk factor with your diabetes. Let's talk about stress. So I get that done, and they start taking their meds again. So mentally and physically, they can get back on track. You got to get to the root of stress.
So I definitely want to tackle all of that. But so where did you grow up?
I grew up, originally in an army base. My dad, in New Hampshire, and then we moved to England, and then we back to West Virginia, the latter part where they had raised. And so I grew up in the mountains of West Virginia, the latter part of my childhood. It was wonderful.
Was he an army doctor? Your dad?
It was for a bit, yeah. During the Vietnam War, he was drafted, and the latter part of the Vietnam War. So, and he served on an army base.
As a physician, as a doctor helping the soldiers?
Well, yeah, before they were shipped out, he would do physicals and everything. Nothing, major combat. And he would joke about it. I got injured by my pencil at my desk being in the army. And and he was a medic that helped recruits, get ready for go overseas on an army base in New Hampshire. Yeah, so and that's
So then how did your progression, so then when you went from high school to college, was that from West Virginia then to Northwestern?
no, I was in Cincinnati in between there. I
Okay.
went to the University of Cincinnati residency. Yeah. It was a good 3 years residency in a sort of a step up city so it was a smaller city in West Virginia, Charleston, and then, to a middle-sized city, Cincinnati, then the big city, Chicago, and
Can you
once
just
yeah,
would you mind sharing when you talked about med school, when you had the
yeah.
stress and you were and you needed some time? Because I'm sure a lot of people, med school is not, I never went to med school, but from the it's I know it's not easy, and I know it's very stressful, and a lot of the people that go into med school don't talk about, because it's viewed as a weakness, right? If you talk about how stressed out you are, it's just you just as a physician, they just expect you to cope with it, right?
Well, yeah, they want you to succeed. All medical schools want you to succeed. There's people there that you can reach out to. Well, I think in my case, I was so your first 2 years are basic science, and you toward the midway through my second year, I was just isolating myself in libraries rather than I was very social on campus before in college, and I kind of reflected like, wow, I lost part of myself. Like I'm not, so I had to say, okay, I got to get in study groups and make a little social, even to study. There were, I opened up and there were groups around, and it kind of helped me not be in my head so much. Like, okay, I didn't do well on one test, and like everybody doesn't do well on one test in this.
Okay.
There's a tough genetics teacher in med school, like like a one credit class in med school. But anyway, you worry about these things, and you worry, it just consumes you because I wasn't used to that. In college, I did very well, and so you have to cope with some of those things. And I think the biggest thing about medical school is having a emotional stability to get through
Mm.
all that. And I have that in me. My parents blessed me, but I was just kind of got lost because I got a little obsessed because I was in libraries a lot, isolating. That was a
Instead of
common.
hearing from your colleagues, "Hey, they're going through a lot of the same stuff."
Right. And as I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, that was a pattern when I moved to Chicago. I isolated myself studying for my boards. And then when I did reach out, it got better. And when I had a restaurant, things were financially tough and I isolated and I kind of hid. I was embarrassed to tell my family. And finally I did tell, a couple brothers and they,
About the restaurant,
yes. And they
which is a
helped.
hard business in of itself.
Yeah. So, I was trying to be a doctor and a restaurateur. It was kind of tough.
Yeah.
A bad time to do it with the economy at that time. But
What year was that?
2009, the subprime crisis. I think the worst time in 80 years. But yeah, so I think that, like I said, having and reflecting upon those things. Why do I love talking about stress levels? Because you live part of it. You have some good solutions. You when you conquer these things, and there's things that I will not get back into my life. I don't want to, have some degree of isolation in my life that I have to isolate when things aren't going well, or a challenge like studying for boards or whatever it was that I did in my life. And I see there's little, we have to self police ourselves, I think. And any, why are we down? What is it? What specifically is we get, it might be close to burnout, even in the work world. Oh, yeah. So I'm just saying that was 2009. And a couple other times in my life I went down. The common theme of all this is that I isolated myself. When I moved to Chicago, I asked myself to study for my boards. And it was in an environment that wasn't as personable a little more political at Northwestern than the friendly University of Cincinnati environment. So I had to adjust to these office politics kind of things with
Mm.
academia, and didn't have all the skills for that. And then, you know, um, and then the restaurant came, and it was I was financial stress, and I wasn't used to this kind of you know stress, to building a restaurant, which was foreign to me, and the people that you have to manage, who you had to get tough, which I did. And those skills you had to bring them up, but also, I just kind of isolated it, and I didn't, tell too many people in my family. I did my family, a few close friends. Started getting better, and say, hey, we need it. Yeah, we'll help you out. So, but anyway, the idea is when I have patients in front of me that have issues and they don't really want to talk about it. A lot of the guys, they're macho, whatever. And even the women sometimes like, no, I don't want to bother my family, my brother, my spouse. I go, hey, that's what they're there for. Come on. Yeah, you do the same for them.
Yeah.
And, so I tell them like, okay, you want to open up, in a safe space. I know how to open people up. I'm very, professionally, what's bugging you? Okay. I can feel the tension. I can cut it with a knife right in front of me. What's bugging you? Come on.
Yeah.
What's the most stress? Is it relationship? Is it passive aggressive boss? Is it your workload at work? Is it financial? You're not having ends meet. What is it? And let's talk. Because you're not taking your diabetic medicines, you're not taking your asthma medicines, whatever. What's going on with your life? It's affecting your physical health, your mental health.
Yeah. So, okay, so when you start your internal medicine practice,
Yeah.
now you're working on for healing your patients,
Yes.
and then but you're also remembering all these times that you had where, you were battling your own stresses in your own life, and now you're trying to heal people, but you're also keeping those experiences pretty fresh. You say, you know what, I can probably blend the two together to try to help people. But, when you're first getting out though, how did that evolution take place where you're first focusing on healing your patients and then saying, you know what, I can take this one step further and start talking to them about stress? Or was it at the same time?
Well, okay. So the few evolutions you go through as a practitioner. Okay. When I first became a doctor, I was very serious, and I would it's kind of funny, but I tell this to the doctors working under me, and I think they're probably a lot more casual now than the way life was back then. The formality we had as a professional, doctors, lawyers, other professionals. And I thought that I had to live that when I had an MD at my name, fresh out my intern year. And I said, patients would, talk about things, maybe humorous, introduce humor, and I wouldn't laugh because I thought I had to be serious. But I thought, in a small way, that's the way of connecting with me. And then a lot of times, I would go out and I would not talk about the stress and say, "Oh my God, that's a big part of their problem." When they come back for another visit, I said, "Okay, I just got to find a way myself." So I evolved a little bit to, in a safe space, talk about the stress. And I can tell you, some of the most satisfying new patients I have is when you can feel how tense they are walking in, and I say, "Hey, you live alone, right? How can you tell? You're in your head, okay, let's op," and I think, "Okay." And and people think, "Oh, it's touchy-feely." It's not about being touchy-feely. That's not really it. There's things that are blocking them from doing taking their medications, doing
Mm,
the regular exercise, everything, or just interacting at their job, whatever, that they're ignoring. And somebody has to be, if the doctor, it could be their spouse, their brother, it's going to help start the conversation. But this day and age, they don't open up because they're embarrassed more than ever, I think, because I hear this a lot, like, "Oh, I don't want to bug them." And they're at home on their screens and thinking they're going to solve it by scrolling. No, you got to dig deep with someone else and talk to somebody. And it can be to start. And if there's more significant problems, I'll get them to a professional, of course, a mental health professional, other
mhm,
than myself, being another doctor, a mental health professional. So, but I can handle some of the things like talk therapy and anxiety, and I've done it for many years, and panic panic disorder. I can handle a lot of, get these things started. So I changed as a practitioner to
mm,
to be more nosy in a professional way. And it's like we all have limits to where we can talk in a professional environment. And,
yeah.
and but but I and where and I can feel out the patient. Sometimes I just don't want to talk that much, or it's wait till next time. That's fine. But I would say about probably 97% of the time I can get some meaningful conversation to help them with their stress, and to control their stress. And you know I can feel it. What's very satisfying as a new patient, when I do have this conversation and we get this catharsis, they cry sometimes, first
Mm.
patients. I mean, they're flowing.
So you really can sense this, huh? You have got that, like, sixth sense of,
Yes,
people coming in and they're not well, but you
yeah.
can pick up on that vibe.
It's like a Dr. Phil moment. I can remember this woman from Cuba. Okay, I just got back from Cuba. I had a nice little trip there. It was like 6 years, 7 years ago, and she was Cuban. And she at first she was excited, and then she got um, a little paranoid. Says, "You're not going to tell." She'd left there like 30 years ago under Castro and everything. I said, "This horrible back pain," and I had her on. I had to go up a little bit to a hydrocodone, which is a narcotic. And then I was talking about, initially, I just saying, "Hey, I'm back from my trip." "Oh, you went to Cuba? Oh, you're Cuban? Okay." Talk about the food, and then I started talking about a problem, and then she had all this pain and stress from her back pain, but then she emoted about being under Castro, and she just let it all out and cried. And then I said, "Do you want your pain medicine anymore?" She says, "No." And I'd had it on for like 6 months. It was gone. So the somatic pain was gone. So it was like a Dr. Phil moment, and I didn't plan
Yeah.
it out at all.
She just had that she was carrying that weight with her that it
Yeah.
actually manifested itself into
30
back
years.
pain.
30 years, and it happens. Certain cultures have different types of pain. Americans have more low back pain. Other cultures, like Middle Eastern, Asian, a little bit more abdominal pain. There's different somatic areas, and I think it's just partly culture, and I don't know, but that's some patterns. I've talked to other psychiatrists about this. We have some physical pain, and I believe it's part physical, part emotional. I say there's a physical component and emotional component to most all pain. We can look at the emotional component for right now a little bit and bring it down. Maybe we'll help the pain. And you can do this at home with your friends, and relaxation techniques and exercise. All these things continue. So that's
So
part of stress management is understanding how it's connected, causing physical pain, causing other physical processes.
let me ask you a question, because this is, when you're starting out in medical practice in internal medicine, isn't one of the metrics that you're judged by how many patients you're seeing in the workday? And now you're adding this extra like analysis and healing, which is awesome. But
Yeah.
are people saying, "Hey, Dr. G, you're taking a little too long with your patients. We need you to see more folks in that same amount of time." Did you ever get that pressure?
Not the only person I get it from is from my office manager, and says, "Snap, snap, Dr. G. We got Mrs. Smith over here." that's like so let me tell you my pressure. But it's funny you mentioned that because I gave a lecture to just how to fit in strategically stress in a 20-minute interview. And you can do it, doesn't take that long. That's why I called rapid mind resets, which we can talk
Okay.
about a little later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, RMR is defined. I have to do it within 10 minutes and maybe a 30-minute, and some but I only have maybe I'll have about 20 minutes with everything else I'm doing for them with the paperwork and a
Hmm.
visit or we only need a 15-minute, we have a scheduled 15-minute. I can get it in 2 minutes, 3 minutes to get some awareness. It doesn't take that long. But I'm not really this is a big part of their medical problem. So if you don't address it, you're saying, I'm doing this extra thing. I'm doing a stress analysis. It may take 2 to 5 minutes on average inside asking about their meds and, going over their history and doing a physical exam, limited. Usually we do a limited one depending on the problem. Put it all, how can I fit it in? But I got the same question asked by a intern when I gave a lecture. And I'm thinking, why are they asking it? They should be thorough. And I'm the attending, and it says, "Doctor, we don't really have time to do that." He was like,
Right.
is that practical?" I gave a lecture on stress to medical students and doctors as a grand rounds about a year ago, and he asked me similar, like, "How do you fit it in?" And it's not that hard, and you get better
Okay.
as a practitioner. But I'm saying if you ignore it, you're not going to solve the problem. And the
Mm.
bigger problem, and yes, corporate wants you to see 4 patients in an hour sometimes. I'm not with corporate. Yay, I'm private practice. So I can do it the way I want. But even there are doctors that are my colleagues that are with corporate university, everything, and other entities that do this.
Hmm.
And my biggest thing you struck upon this was you fell into my evil trap. Okay, fine. My evil trap is we don't do enough of it in primary care. I'm a primary care doctor for adult primary care. For adult or family off primary care, I don't think we do enough mental health. And here's the other problem. It's hard to get and most people that you can't get a psychiatrist visit for 6 months most of the time or 3 months or ever sometimes. It's hard with insurances the way they are and the way the psychiatrist shortage is. A lot of them just take cash or they don't take public aid. They don't take certain products, but my patients are low income, middle income. They're public aid and Medicare and private. But I have a lot of patients in all those categories. It's sometimes even hard to get a psychiatrist. So there's primary care has to take up the slack because nobody else is going to. Nobody's doing it. It's only getting worse.
And it's only also getting worse too, because aren't we seeing more of a shortage of people going into medicine?
Yes. In general, we're having a relative shortage. I think it's about the same number of doctors producing every year, but we're having more demand, more population growth, and et cetera. Mental health, we're having a high. I can tell you, there's some diagnoses that younger people are having that I haven't seen. I didn't see 10, 15 years ago. And
Like, can you give an example?
yeah, sure, agoraphobia in my Gen Zs, the 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds. And I looked at the incidence, and it is pretty high among 20-year-olds now. Why? Agoraphobia is fear of being outside in social.
Outside, right? Yeah.
So they need help. And I open up about that. I talk about how to leave your house. Nobody else is going to do it because they're not talking to anyone because they're on these things. They're
Yeah.
scrolling and they're reading these fearful things on the web. And most of the stuff is over. More stuff is overwhelming on the web and or social media, and sometimes the media. It sensationalizes things, and their friends.
Sometimes?
"What? It's like
Sometimes really?
what is it?" Perhaps. So, and it depends on the network, I suppose. But, I think that, those, what I have a special affinity for the younger 20, 30-year-old because I was going through those work stresses and those kind of stresses. And they go to work, they go home, but I kind of talk about their stresses and then they're afraid of their image. That's why they don't want to go out because of what social media says of, you have to look perfect and so forth. So we just open up about that. And it's really not that touchy-feely. It's just sometimes scratch the surface. I'll do what's called a stress diary too. Like at home, your homework is to tell me where the stresses are coming from. And they come back and but just by doing that exercise, they already know what to do. They
So
know. Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's pretty much, I'm just to summarize, some of the younger
Yes.
patients, agoraphobia, panic disorder, anxiety disorders, there's many anxieties and phobias, OCD, everything, they have a lot of that. and we're ignoring it. And they're not going to be as productive work. They're not be happy in their social relationships. It becomes the definition of a mental health problem becoming more significant, where they need a psychiatrist, where the social and occupational functioning deteriorates. But we're at that level. Some of my patients I see, they have
Yeah.
trouble at work, they have trouble at home, and they need a referral. And I do refer them to psychiatrists, but I have to understand it. And as a primary care doctor, again, my evil trap I said that you fell into is like, we have this time crunch. And some doctors, they'll end up selling supplements to supplement their income and do different things. And because it's really tough to fit it all in and, everything. But that core interview, you want to help out the patient, you have to understand the life stresses to
Yeah.
really make an impact on not all the time, but a lot of times in the patients to help solve the medical problem, the physical problem, the mental problem.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing that because I think you really touched on a key point about how, I mean, you can read any of the articles, surveys, or statistics about how mental health is becoming such an increased problem, and they call it doom scrolling for a reason.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if we break it down a little bit, I mean, what do you define if somebody says this is what stress is? Dr. G, tell me what stress is. What's your definition?
Well, stress is perceived. And, we go back to our fourth grade flight or flight response. We have stress that biologically we have some stress. We take certain environmental triggers and how stress is how it affects us mentally and physically. And it's there biologically to run from the tiger or, in the wild, we had to get out of the way. But unfortunately, it's turned on sometimes triggers from our past thinking or different things that trigger stress that floods all these epinephrines and et cetera and makes us loopy and crazy. And if this goes on long enough, we can get burned out. And then when you get burned out, cortisol burnout is not a good thing. And you lose your creativity, your function, your efficiency. You can't smile. You can get clinically depressed.
So it snowballs.
Snowballs. You don't want to avoid. I say in my book, I said the word crispy. We get crispy, burnt around the edges. When we notice we're crispy, slow down. I
Yeah.
notice I'm crispy during the week, like in a work week. On the weekend, I got to chill. I got to go for a nice run and up a trail somewhere along the lake or somewhere. And it gets better over the weekend because I notice the signs in myself. I self-police myself, my stress. I'm, crispy around the edges, like, and I'm not laughing as much. I'm not enjoying life, and okay, take a break, stop. So yeah, so it's good to kind of during the day notice why I feel lousy. Just
Hmm.
all these negative thoughts, stop for a moment.
Well, I think a lot of people have a challenge with hitting that reset button. Like, okay, I woke up, I'm in a lousy mood, or midday and something happened. I got a bad call. I got caught up in traffic. Somebody cut me off. Somebody didn't hold the door. I think a lot of people have a challenge with hitting that reset button. I'll be frank. There's times, the Eagles lost the football game a couple weeks ago to the Giants. I woke up in a lousy mood because the Phillies lost the night too. And it's how does one hit that reset button? How do you stop the snowball, hit reset, and then move forward with your day?
Okay. Well, in general, I would say that you have to. I think if you're in your head a lot, you might not realize that you're ruminating about the Eagles losing the game and you're feeling bad all day and the next day. You have to kind of relate maybe someone to. But I think it's. Well, I can kind of go through that if you want to use that as an example. A rapid mind reset. I could rapidly reset
You talked about your rapid mind reset. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a good segue.
So I think you have to understand the linkage that that you know you attribute to those kind of stress. That might be not a universal example as much, but I'm
No, but
just
say like you get caught in traffic or somebody cut you off
traffic.
and
Let's talk
then
about
nobody's
traffic.
opening the door for you and you couldn't get in the elevator.
Let's talk about road rage and traffic because that's a good example because it comes on immediately and you can solve it kind of quickly. The sports. I think you're emotionally invested in something, and it does take a while because you brought it up so high. And I think here's how to do that: sort of prepare in advance if they were to lose, how you feel. That's in stress management. We prepare ourselves for eventual outcomes. Like I can't change the outcome of a game, but you can still say that. But you love your team. But we'll put that one aside now. We'll talk about
Yep,
road rage. Okay,
fair enough.
how I deal with Chicago road rage, and there's a fair amount of
Yeah.
but people are always want to be emotional, and then say something and do some gestures. you know. So I think you have to partly it as a driver, you have to say, well, maybe they didn't mean to cut me off. If you're worried about that, maybe they didn't see that light. But the immediate assumption people did something deliberately to hurt you. Maybe open to people have a lot of other things going on that they didn't do anything to hurt you. Now, a lot of times, like if I did something and I do every once I'm not perfect driver, whatever. I'm driving too slow a lot of times, whatever, and I'm looking around and I get honked and like and they'll go by, and they'll yell something, and I'm thinking, all right. I usually don't look at them, don't give them that because this is ridiculous. Because I was just, you have to look at the situation and say, just look at that moment. For me, it's not hard because I'm so used to it, and I'm very, seasoned driving, and I just don't let it bother me. And the other people just have to say something back. You have so much energy. I think the key is don't try to, because that may make things worse, and it may make that a lot worse. And with a person that may be violent, whatever. Think of all these
Yeah.
things. You can escalate. Is it worth it? Choose your battles. Is it worth it? So it's not worth to get you all worked up for something like that.
Yeah, I studied martial arts for a number of years, and we always one of our instructors who was about 5'8", about a buck 60, the most unassuming guy that you could ever meet. And when he was, if there was ever, and we would go out when we were in our 20s, and there was one time where a pretty big guy was not happy with him, and he just looked at him and just like, is this worth it? And we were all talking to the big guy, like, listen, this isn't worth it. That's not the guy that you really want to be messing with. And all he said in a very calm way was, this is just ask yourself if this is worth it. And finally it really diffused the whole situation. I think it's a really good way. Cause I think most times we'll find whether it's road rage or, somebody not holding the door for you or, most of it isn't worth it. It's certainly not worth derailing your whole day for and impacting your mental health too. Yeah. So now when you talk about some of the things you talk about stress, but there's also, different kinds of stress because we've got stress perhaps at home, but we also have stress at work, right? I mean, so is the rapid mind reset? I guess that's something that could work for both forms of stress, home stress and work stress, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let me just kind of outline that real quick. So rapid mind reset is just how you can reset yourself. You have a bad feeling, you have a stress. First, and I call it, you want to have stress control. Stress control, you can never eliminate all stress, but you can control your environment and you control what goes on in your head, you know, as much as possible, And so you have to understand the stress that comes in and analyze it and understand it and what linkages you have on it, that make it sort of maladaptive. For the road rage example, like you might think of some other things that happened in the past with another road accident, some past PTSDs. You
Mm,
link up something that's maladaptive. So analyze that. Okay, be open. And so, in that situation, so there's a process of stress control as a component of understanding what the specific stress is and analyze it and hold it to the light and say, does this make sense logically for me to be stressed about? Is this an immediate danger, or is this not? And it comes to a point where then I talk about stresses. So there might be a relationship thing going on with their children or something I'll talk about or financial. And I'll talk about the exact problem. They lost their job and we look it up and says how to understand that and how, just to understand what the next steps are for that. And it gets better and it knocks down. Say, okay, your stress level, understand your stress score, say a 9. So I like to score it. And when I talk to my
hmm
patients, quickly, I say, what's your score now? Right now. It's a 9. Okay. And then I say, why? Okay. Okay. I got fired from my job and can't make sense meet. So that's a 1 and 2 thing. So it's a financial stress right now, and it's an occupational stress. They don't have a job. They got to find it. They're linked. So we'll talk about I usually talk about one if they're linked like that. I'll talk about both of them because they're kind of linked, and we'll go through quickly about some steps, and then it comes to a point where I tackle as much as I can, and then we table it with the plan. So you get it off your plate. I've done as much as I can now. I'm going to go about my day. I'm going to write it down, my plan. You're not ignoring it because things are directly affecting if you don't want to ignore. And that's going to, something that you want to try to understand. And I say, hey, we need support for that stress. Let's see, I'll kind of counsel them on that stress. And then really we go through some things and about some relaxation techniques that we want to build on our day, and they'll have a timetable, and you're gonna, I can see it in a month, but in 2 weeks or 1 week, you want to talk to your friend, again about this, but we tabled it for now, and let's go on with our life a little bit, and let's work on a plan, and and then later on you want to um, you come back and you remind them, because and that shows that you're sort of accountable to them. You care, and a lot of life is just about showing up. And hey, what about that job situation? Oh, it's gotten much better, doctor. And everything, and the stress level. But the end of it, I want to kind of quantify it too. It was 9, now it's a 5. Okay, we
Mm.
knocked it down 4 points. See what we did in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So here's so the good news about that, especially for the younger people who don't have coping skills. Subconsciously, you develop skills for that kind of stress. The next time it happens, you work through methodically and you can tackle it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like that's a good segue into so I guess part of what you're doing is developing like a stress management and control plan
Right.
for your patients, right?
Yeah. So
Because when they leave your office, they got to be able to handle this, employ some of these tactics on their own.
well, right. And sometimes it's the support aspect. And I'll say they have like some have zero deep supports. And a deep support is someone you can tell something personal and trust them with your information.
Okay.
Your family, friend, significant other, and some of them don't, they've alienated the family, and they may have like parents and 3 kids, like, okay, why you have some brothers, is why aren't you talking to them? Because, oh, they said something on Christmas and I'm not talking to them now 6 months ago. They're your brother. They what I don't even ask
Yeah.
what they said or do whatever. It says, but is that real? It says, but who was your closest? And I said, can you go mend fences maybe for a family member? Or they say, maybe I don't want to do that. I go, all right, your homework in the next month is make a new friend. And you can start off with an acquaintance. Go to the Starbucks and the barista, or a manager, server at a restaurant you like to go to, whatever, some community center near where you live, whatever. Try to develop a connection. Someone you might see regularly, whatever, an acquaintance, or
Hmm.
baby steps, because they don't want to be social a lot of times. Again, we have a lot of agoraphobia out there. People don't want to go out anymore and connect as much as they used to, because they want to be on their devices. You look at parts of downtown Chicago in the financial district. I used to love go down there as friends, and teaming with all these cool financial people. It's like ghost town, like certain time lunch,
Really?
not very many people outside. Like I went down there recently, to run an errand, and near the in the financial district in Chicago downtown. It's just not so. We're not social. Our downtowns like used to be teeming, and we're not doing work. All these buildings are becoming vacant in New York, Chicago, and all these. So it's really, and other areas we're just areas we're not as social as we used to be around work time, especially. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah. But now you've evolved into developing some programs, and you're also working on building a
yeah,
retreat package as well. Can you talk a little more about that?
yeah, we can, yeah, we'll finish up with that, and I thank you for mentioning that. So I
Thank you
have,
for being here. Yeah.
my pleasure. I have 90-day boot camp for executives primarily. Well, the reason is I think they have a different kind of stress. So the kind of general work stress that we have are in workload for in the employee situation, and work life balance, and sometimes when we don't know our expectations exactly mismatch, especially when a new boss comes in. That's a huge stress. As an example, we don't know expectations. A lot of things at work that are tough. And I go over those sort of subsets of problems when we talk about work stress. And executives have a whole nother set that, responsibilities and stresses that they have, and they want to be models in front of their employees and look good in good health. I have a program that helps fit in health and understand stress, and really using a little bit of tech and AI to help with their day to be more efficient with their work. And I think there's 3 things we have to balance out in our life. And I'll kind of end on this.
Hmm.
Most of us need to work. Most of us need the life, like the relationship side with our significant others and our family, our friends. And we need our health. And the health is one that gets, yeah, out of there. And I mentioned, we were talking on last week, and we were chatting about this. One thing that I leave out, doctors leave out the financial part in the work, and their financial planning is not very
Yep.
good. And I'm reforming, but I was like that as well.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, the last question is that did you ever feel like you had a financial wingman to be there for you when you had all these different ups and downs and as you're developing your programs, et cetera?
No, I need a financial,
Okay.
and I
Well, we'll talk.
definitely and we'll talk. No, I do need it. No, that sounds actually really nice. There's a lot of doctors, like, they go on emotion more sometimes, like, they're very logical about their patients, but they think the investments are gonna be well, you have to be sort of logical about your financial planning,
Yeah.
that financial planning such as yourself, and help a wingman would be awesome. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna take you up on that. But I have this program that's gonna help fit in the health, work, and life balance in a 90-day boot camp, and, you know, help with the scheduling and, and just scheduling all the maybe health visits, either whether it's a telemedicine visit or whatever, and understand your current health, and we'll do a big analysis of so your physical, mental, and stress. And like I said, we're going to look deeper into stress. And then at the end of it, we can put together a retreat that I
Mm,
have designated areas in the Chicago area and Fort Lauderdale area. That I have some beautiful areas and beautiful planned retreats that we can get a group of people together, perhaps a small group, and do that. And I think sometimes for a reset, a total big life reset, you need to stop what you're doing. And at the retreats, one of the philosophies I do is like you got to identify all your stress. You need to know those before, but then drop them, forget about them, have a time when you got to tear down and rebuild. Part of that at the retreat that I do, you got to get a little crazy, meaning you got to do either I do extreme sports, but I don't expect everybody to do extreme, so zip lining, climbing up cliffs and stuff. And the reason I do that, you have to focus on that activity, that you drop all your stresses, and
yeah.
and you're free, and then you just almost you're holding all those stresses like it's a big weight. And then after I've done that rappelling or the zip line, I go, oh my god, I feel so different. I there was a time I didn't obsess, every day, every week about my work. I let it go. But we do that at the retreat in a different way. We might do exotic dancing or something like that they haven't done. And you have to focus on the activity, and you can't think of your life stresses, your work life stresses. You just got to do the activity. And then that's part of the tearing down and rebuilding that you can do. Gives your mind a break, a gap, that you can come back and rebuild it in a more constructive way to handle your stresses in a more resilient mind, to build that um, after doing thousands of patient interviews, and understanding the process of this, and I want to do it a little bit more for the executive, because I figure if they do it, my mission is they'll do it for their whole company, maybe 500, 1,000 employees, and then it trickles down that stress,
Yeah.
and and that focus on health as well. And they're going to be a little more productive, creative, efficient at their work, really, if they do these. And there'll be a model if they're focusing on health for their employees as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So, Dr. G, where can people find out more information about you and your work?
Well, if you could go to my website right now, bodyandmindmedical.com. That's my office website. And also, or DominicGazianoMD.com for a little bit more about I could do some speaking as well, and for the programs, DominicGazianoMD.com.
And all of the links will be in the descriptions on the descriptive information on the in the podcast on the YouTube channel too. Okay. Well, Dr. G, thank you so much for being here. I thought it was an awesome conversation. I think it's something everybody really needs to focus on, and it's great that you are providing this resource. And when a lot of folks are saying that a lot of physicians are saying they don't have the time, or like you said, how do they fit it in?
Right.
So, but thank you so much. That's wrap up this episode. And when it comes to financial planning, remember the one thing that we say is the time to have the map is before you enter the woods. And thank you everybody for being here. And thank you again, Dr. G.
Thank you so much.